What is up, people? Van for the Vaniverse gaming channel here, bringing you another Should I Buy video on a game called Sword Legacy Omen, which came out in 2018, but because I was so heavily involved in Conan Exiles in 2018, I really didn't play a lot of other games at the time. So I had some time to try this one out, and I was pleasantly surprised on how good this game was from a strategy turn-based RPG perspective. So I wanted to give you guys my opinion of it, and if it's something you guys like and want to buy it, go ahead and pick it up. Now, I will tell you, since this game is 2 years old and it's a very short game, probably about 10 hours of gameplay, you can pick it up on sale on most Steam, Fanatical, Green Man Gaming, whatever, for about $3 to $5, depending on the sale and whatnot. So for $5 to get 10 hours of enjoyment out of a really fun tactical turn-based RPG, I think it's worth the money, and so this is my reasoning why. So first, let's kind of talk about what the game is and how it plays. So as I said, the game is a strategic, tactical, turn-based RPG. It plays very similar to like a Banner Saga, where when you're in combat, there's a grid system, and each character has different, abilities it can use, and you can either move and then use an ability, or move super far and then you can't use an ability that turn. Very similar to how Banner Saga works. Now, you're allowed to have a party of up to 4 characters at any given time. There are 8 characters to choose from in the game. You unlock them as you play, and each character adds a specific class that you didn't have before. So you start out with Uther and Merlin. So your basic sword and board tank character and your basic squishy caster character. And then as you get out of the tutorial area in the beginning, you'll pick up a polearm wielding guy who, good for long range stabby. And then you also pick up your rogue, who is good for your sneaking and unlocking, locked doors and chests and all of that. And so each combat, you have to basically use the 4 party members and try and not waste all your points and kill the enemies before they kill you. Now, similar to a Divinity Original Sin 2 or Divinity Original Sin, you can actually use the terrain for your benefit. There are barrels of different liquids that, if you're using Uther, for example, you can actually hit it with your shield and knock it back a tile, and then it'll break. So there's different things you can do that affect the terrain, similar to like a Divinity Original Sin 2, where you're trying to put oil or fire on the play field that enemies have to run through and take damage. Now, when we talk about the art style, it's also very similar to a Banner Saga, but it also feels very comic booky. All of the text boxes, they're written, which looks like it's a comic book characters, and they're speaking. So I really enjoyed how they did the visuals of this game. The visuals of this game are very aesthetically appealing, and they're very pleasing, and so I really enjoyed playing through it and just the art style they chose to use. And the story is also a very fun story to play through. I mean, basically, it's set in old Britain, so UK, they call it Britannia, and it's set before Arthur and the whole Excalibur story with Merlin. And you play Uther, who is a knight with the king at the time, and the king is murdered, and the king's daughter is kidnapped. And so you were the knight sworn to protect her, and now you're trying to flee because you're blamed for the murder, and you're trying to rescue her and also fight against this evil person who's creating an army. And so not only do you have to figure out where she is and rescue her, but you also need to get the enemy factions that are all across Britannia to join your cause and build an army. So there's a little politicking going on. There's a little, heroism, rescue the maiden going on. And also you're trying to do all that and take out the evil lord trying to take over all of Britannia. So the story is pretty interesting because it involves the whole King Arthur, but it was before that. So Merlin's in it, the Excalibur's in it. So it's actually pretty cool. And if you guys have watched the show Cursed yet, that's also another take on the whole Excalibur thing previous to Arthur. So this is a storyline that seems to go out even in, movies and also in video games. So that is kind of how the art style works and how the gameplay works. So let's kind of talk about the combat now. So you can see that each character gets to move, and depending on how far you move, you have you have a movement amount, and then you have certain attacks. And each attack takes certain amount of points to use, similar to any other turn-based combat game. And when you click on the ability, you can kind of see in a yellow exactly where it's going to hit the whole thing. So it's really well done in showing you how things work. The one thing I will say is that this game adds in a whole nother thing. I guess this was in other games. It's called willpower in this game, and those are the little yellow dots under your health bar. You can choose to spend your willpower points, and that will give you the ability to take more action. So basically, if you're out of points and you want to make that one last attack, you can actually burn up some of your willpower. Now, the thing is that if you use too much willpower, you can actually gain madness, and when you gain madness, you actually want to flee the battlefield. This also happens when your party members die, your morale goes down, and you start to get a little worried about everything. So it's a kind of an interesting thing because each character gets a certain amount of pool of willpower that they can use, and that willpower really helps them when it comes to doing more on their turns and casting more spells. So kind of a cool little gimmick that you have in the game that you don't maybe get in some of the other games. Now there is like sneaking and stealthing in this game, so Gwen can get into certain positions and do some damage, and then also, as I said before, you can kind of affect the terrain as well. So combat looks pretty simple. It's very self-explanatory, but at the same time, it's kind of important to pick the right party, especially if you're playing on certain difficulty levels, because having the right party is really good. And since you have 8 characters to choose from, it's really hard to choose which ones you want to put in your party. So this is going to be a spoiler for anyone who doesn't want to know this, but the 8 characters you can choose from is Uther, who is your tank-based, Merlin, who's your lightning bolt type caster guy, Dwayne, which is your polearm dude, Gwen is your rogue, you got this other guy, and I can't think his name, he's your cleric, he's your healer character, you have a big barbarian guy, he's like your rage, lots of damage, no armor type fella. You have your dwarf, who's like a rune master, so he's really good at disarming traps, and he uses kind of rune magic, so he puts like fire on his hammer, and he can cast a lot of fire type spells. And then you have a wood elf, who is your quintessential archer, wood elf archer, and so I think that covers all of them. Yeah, so those are the 4 characters you get to choose from, and you have to figure out every time you enter a new map which 4 you want to put into your party. So as you progress through the game, you basically get to go to different towns, and then in between there's rest spots. And so like other games, your characters don't heal unless you choose to heal them by resting. So you need provisioning to do that. You need specific items you need to rest, or if you find a town with an inn, you need to pay money to rest in a town. And so it's actually quite expensive early on to rest in an inn, so characters getting injured is actually a problem. And certain characters, if they die in combat on one of the maps, then they have a negative penalty until they rest, which lowers some of their stats. So it's very similar to other games that way. I think Banner Saga does it as well, where if your character dies, they have a specific penalty if you try and use them again. That's a very common Banner Saga thing. The other thing about this game that is very interesting is each character, they have a set of skills they can choose from. So each character gets 10 skills that they get to choose from, and 7 of them are going to be active skills, and 3 of them are going to be passive skills. The problem is you can only have 4 skills available at any time, including passive skills. So it really makes you have to think which 4 skills you're going to put on your bar. And how you unlock skills is by gaining renown. And renown is gained by completing objectives on maps and killing things, and that's going to put up your renown, and so your renown is actually a pool used for your whole party. So if you have 400 renown, you have to use all 400 renown points across all of your party members if you want to level them up and unlock skills. So the renown unlocks the skills, and then once you have them unlocked, you have to choose 4 of them to keep on your bar at any given time. So on top of that, you also have different gear. So you can have 1 weapon, 1 armor, and 2 trinket slots. And so each class uses different trinkets, different weapons, different armor. And then also, like every other game, you have your ability scores that help specific classes by putting points into specific ability scores. So very common RPG type mechanics on building your character. But in a Banner Saga game, you know, it's very similar to other Banner Saga games, except for you have your 8 characters that you choose from, and there's not a whole plethora of like a specific guy. Like you have 4 guys that are all barbarian type characters, or 4 guys that are all tank, sword, and shield guys. That's not how this one works. You literally get 8 characters, and those 8 characters are the ones you use throughout the game, and you don't get them all at the same time. You actually have to gain them as you play through the game. So the game board it looks like a tabletop where you have a game piece and you're basically moving it from town to town, and as you move you're going through exploring the town, you're doing the battles, you're talking to people, and the end goal is to get the Excalibur and to go and fight the bad guy at the end of the game. So all in all, even though the game is about 10 hours of actual play time and it's pretty short, when you play the game, the art style, the music, the narration, the combat, the characters and their personalities and how they interact and their different skills they get, it makes for a really fun game. And if you play it on different difficulty levels and there's different options you can do, then you could actually have some replayability with this game. Since it's so short, you can change your characters around a little bit and try it on different difficulties, etc., etc. So hopefully this was a video that gives you a pretty good idea of how this game plays, and maybe this is something that you want to pick up if you're into these strategy RPG turn-based games like I am. So hope this video was great and you like it. Give it a thumbs up, and also feel free to leave any comments. If there's other videos you want to see, that should I buy video, or if you have any comments about this particular video as well. This is Van from the Vaniverse Gaming channel. As always, appreciate y'all watching. Cheers and peace out.